Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Wrath of La Vipera, Nera. How long has it been? Ale's mouth was dry, but sweat dampened his lips. 47 minutes, a voice replied. Closing his eyes, Ale drew in as much breath as his lungs would allow, then let it out in a deep sigh. 47 minutes. It felt like hours. There was no clock on the wall, no sunlight in the windows, no way for him to gauge how long he'd been captive. He would just have to keep asking. He sat in a steel chair, his hands tied behind his back. The room around him was pitch dark, and though impossible, it seemed to be growing even darker. It would still be light outside. He'd been taken just before he was to meet his wife for dinner. But to him, it felt like night. The thought of his wife sent a sharp jolt of worry down his spine. Would she do as expected and try to rescue him? He could hope not, but that hope would be irrational. She would come for him. She was the reason he'd been taken in the first place. The only ounce of hope that remained was the certainty he had that she would not make rash decisions. She would plan. She would prepare. She wouldn't let her emotions fog her judgment. At least, he was pretty sure she wouldn't. He tried to use his brain. He tried to gather as much information as he could, but the room seemed to muddle his senses. The air was thin, hot, and smelled of dust. An attic? No, the floor was cool, hard, concrete. It felt small enough that had they not been tied, he could reach out his arms and touch both walls. But whoever spoke to him certainly was further than that. Their voice didn't bounce off the concrete floor. It didn't reverberate off any walls, but he could tell which direction it came from. They weren't close enough that he could sense them near him, but the room felt far too small for them to be more than an arm's length away. He would have to rely on something else. What could he remember? He had just left the house. His head was down, and he was fiddling with his car keys. He didn't see them coming. He was suddenly flung forward, having been shoved from behind with the force of a linebacker. He braced to hit the ground, but had been caught by two more pairs of hands. One, calloused and rough, covered his mouth as another threw something around the top of his head. It was soft. A blanket? A sweatshirt? Something that could be tied. He had kicked wildly. Tried to pry the hand from his face. Tried to scratch. Tried to bite. But it made no difference. His heart was pounding in his ears, but he heard a car approach. Fear forced his muscles to tighten to the point of pain. He tasted the coppery, metallic taste of blood, but it was from his own cheek, caught in the clenching of his jaw. The sound of a car door sliding broke through the fullness in his ears. A van. He felt his feet lift off the ground, a pain stabbing under his arms where he'd been held. He came down hard on the floor of the vehicle, his face feeling cold where the hand had lost its grip. A scream grew in his throat, but hardly made it out of his mouth before he was harshly grabbed again, the hand returning to his lips. The door slid closed, and he felt the vehicle lurch forward. His hands, sweaty and shaking, were pulled behind him and tied together. Someone spoke from the front of the van, firm and demanding. "Don't hurt him unless you have to. The less damage we do, the better." That should have been reassuring, but he knew he wasn't the target. His wife had made enemies. It was inevitable in her line of work, and he knew the danger. Years with no incidents had given him a false sense of security. He should have taken the time to prepared. A self-defense class or two might have done him some good, or learning to shoot a gun. It wasn't for his wife's lack of insistence. He just kept putting it off. And now it was too late. Surely she had prepared, right? Surely she wouldn't fall for a trap like this. She was clever. He had faith in that. He didn't know how long they'd driven, not for sure, but it was long enough for the hand on his mouth to relax, and for him to know that yelling wouldn't help him. When the van stopped, he'd been pulled out of it and carried through a heavy door he remembered hearing slam. He heard the sound of heavy footsteps on stairs and the echoes that followed. A stairwell, then. He struggled to focus, the shoulder of one of his captors digging uncomfortably into his gut. He tried to shift himself to sit more comfortably, but he found he was held too tightly. There was the sound of unintelligible whispers, another heavy door, and moments later he was lowered to his feet and pushed down onto a hard metal chair. Alessandro Fochetta. It wasn't said as a question. They knew who he was. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a response. Your wife, La Vipera Nera. How much do you suppose you're worth to her? He couldn't fight them off. He knew that the second they'd assaulted him, but he could keep his mouth shut. He heard his interrogator tap impatiently on something. A table? I'm sure it's hard to place value on things when you're the most successful thief in Los Angeles. Money doesn't mean the same thing to you as it does to everyone else, does it? Silence. Again. Al was sure he'd make it out of this. And if his wife did too, she'd surely have something to say about being called the most successful thief in LA. Successful? Without a doubt. Thief. She'd fume at the label. He found it hard not to laugh aloud at the thought. They were right. Money didn't mean the same thing to them. It meant something far different 15 years earlier, when the two of them survived off bread, peanut butter, 69 boxes of dried pasta, and canned tuna. But now? Did money mean anything at all anymore? It doesn't matter. Once she sends us $20,000, you're free to go. Al felt a smile form on his lips. He tried to swallow the laugh that was threatening to burst from him, but it came out anyway. He heard a clatter, something thrown to the floor. Anger laced his interrogator's voice. "What the fuck is so funny?" Ale sucked in his lips, trying to stifle his laughter. 20,000. So you've gone and pissed off La Vipera Nera for $20,000? He fought another wave of laughter, reminding himself where he was. He didn't know these people. They could still kill her. There were plenty of people who'd pay more than $20,000 for her head. You could have asked her for $20,000. She might have wondered what for. But she knows what it's like to be desperate for money. It's what had gotten her into the business she was in, after all. Instead, you decided to kidnap her husband and hold him for ransom. No, I don't think she'll give you the money, even if you really were just going to let me go. I think she's going to kill you. He felt a rush of cool air as the man stood. You better hope she makes this easy for all of us. And with that, he was gone. Ale leaned back, feeling the cool steel of the chair through his shirt. It felt nice. Wherever they had him, they hadn't bothered to turn on any air. He wondered what plan his wife would cook up, and let himself imagine it for a few minutes. The silence was broken by footsteps on the hard floor, and he felt someone lean over him. His breath quickened, but he forced it to slow. Their hand gripped the cloth at his head, and he felt a rush of cooler air against his forehead as it was removed. He opened his eyes, expecting to take in a view of the room. But it was complete darkness. He didn't hear the person retreat, but he no longer felt them. Next to him, how long has it been? He was suddenly aware of how dry his mouth was. "Half hour," a voice answered. It wasn't his interrogator. It was too shaky, too unsure. He sounded young. Someone roped into a task that was way over his head. Ale almost felt sorry for him. He didn't know how long his wife would take. Part of him hoped it wouldn't take long at all. But part of him knew that the longer it took, the more solid her plan would be. In the meantime, the room seemed to suffocate him. Sweat beaded on his face. He could feel it slide down his neck. He hoped he'd be conscious when she finally did come. He felt as if he was swaying, but in the darkness, he couldn't quite tell. How long has it been? 47 minutes. It had to be close to an hour now. He would have to prepare himself for hours longer. He wished he had a drink. Suddenly, a wedge of light illuminated the room as a door swung open. Al turned away, unaccustomed to the brightness. Through squinted eyes, he took in what he could of the room. The walls were covered with foam squares to dampen the sound. The only furniture was the chair where he sat, and an office chair that sat parallel to him. He could see someone standing in the corner, still bathed in darkness. The person who'd been keeping track of time. How had he done so? In the dark? There hadn't been the light of a phone, at least that Al had noticed. A frantic boy entered, his face pale and drenched in sweat. Cut his hands free. We need him. She's here. She's inside. He looked over his shoulder as if expecting her to jump out at him. The man in the corner was clearly shaken by the words, jumping forward to cut the tie at Alay's hands. Inside? How did she get inside? Darwin was guarding the... She shot him. She didn't even say anything. She just came out of nowhere, shot him, and forced her way in. He sounded as if he was fighting back tears. Al wasn't the vengeful type, and under most circumstances, neither was his wife. He'd be lying if he said he didn't feel at least a little bad. So what are we going to do? Give him to her. That's what she's here for, isn't it? Ayla felt their fear, though he wasn't sure why. He had been them, or at least similar to them. He had been a terrified 20-year-old, not sure where his next meal would come from, not sure what he would have to do to make rent. These two certainly didn't seem the masterminds behind this plan, regardless. No, that was the man who'd interrogated him. A man old enough to know better. A man arrogant enough to think he could kidnap Alessandro Fochetta and live to tell the tale. And with an extra $20,000 in his pocket. The man who was in here before. The one who asked me questions. Who is he? They froze, or as near to freezing as they could get while still shaking. His name! I need his name! There was more force behind his words now. They shifted uncomfortably on their feet. Leon Metzger, Ailey nodded. With the door open, he could hear someone yelling, and the crack of a gunshot. I can find my way from here. He left the room, closing the door behind him. Sparing them could be dangerous, but killing them would be senseless. Metzger was the one he wanted. Plus, he could easily give them $10,000, and he was sure they'd do whatever he asked. He could remember when 10,000 seemed life-changing. The hallway outside the door was like that of a parking garage, only narrower. It was concrete on the walls and floor, with large, orange-tinted lights along the ceiling. He went toward the commotion. This wasn't a massive operation, half a dozen men at most, and 2 of them were in the room he'd just left. How many stood between him and his wife? He broke into a run, hoping the next person he ran into would be her. Another gunshot rang out, the sound bouncing its way down the halls. He was close. He turned a corner to see his knight in black, bulletproof armor, a seething glower on her face. Her expression immediately brightened as she hastened to him. "Are you all right? Are you hurt?" She looked him over, seeming afraid to touch him in case he was injured. I'm fine. I'm assuming you are too." He poked playfully at the bulky vest she wore. She nodded, but her face grew serious again. "How many were there?" She started down the hallway, 4 at most. He would tell her the truth when she didn't have a gun in her hand, and she wasn't searching for men to kill. Leon Metzger, he's the one in charge. I've taken down 3, so that leaves Mr. Metzger. He wouldn't charge at the woman with a gun. So where is he hiding? Metzger didn't give them the chance to wonder. He appeared down the hall as if on cue, turning and confidently leaning against the wall. There she is, the famed black Viper herself. You really are as fearsome as they say, aren't you? Honestly, I didn't. Another gunshot, then another, and another. Metzger crumpled to the floor like a thrown rag doll. All heard his wife sigh heavily, from relief, he was sure. She turned to face him, taking him into a strong embrace. The Velcro of her vest scratched at his face, but he didn't care. He was safe. She was a criminal. She drew attention and danger, but so long as she was there, he knew he was safe. She pulled back, tucking the gun against her back in the waistband of her pants. "Are you sure you're all right?" She moved her hands along his arms and chest, as if checking him over. "I'm okay, really." He held a hand to his stomach. "I'm kind of hungry, though. Starving, actually." She laughed, wrapping an arm around him and leading him towards the exit. She paid the lifeless bodies no mind as they walked past, and all did the same. "We still have enough time to get to our dinner reservations," she said cheerfully as he pulled open the door for her. "Actually, I'm really craving pasta. The dried pasta we used to get, with the jarred sauce from the dollar store." She gave him a questioning look, but only for a moment. Yeah, that sounds perfect. Venus, buried. The girl in the graveyard is your best friend, so you take her home. The night is a bruise between you, a blotch of rogue in the passenger window. the color of fruit left out to fester. The body pries at her seatbelt, a finger, then two. The radio echoes static. The body shuffles in her seat. You study the face, the similar slice of jaw, the nose humped from where a baseball had hit her at 12, just slightly off-center. The skin, like a rain-licked plastic bag, the stink of musk and sulfur. You want to look away, but you cannot. She's so beautiful, even like this. Your headlights rake warbled slits through the dirt road, a yellow like jaundice. Your hands are stiff from the cold, your lips cracked. The girl beside you is dead, and you are bringing her home. 4 days ago, you'd stepped into a hardware store and emerged with a shovel sturdy enough to lift a life on. 4 days you'd spent digging dirt in your own backyard yard until loam muddied under your fingernails and erratic holes split garden beds like the mouths of greedy beasts, until you could sift through soil with your eyes closed, with a hand bound. 4 nights you had laid in your bed, staring at the pock-marked ceiling, wondering what it felt like to burn alive. Now, the shovel beats dull against the skin of your trunk, your hands gripping the steering wheel like a throat you're trying to silence. The body turns, dawn bleaching the salmon gray of her skin. The left eye slips from its socket, and she pushes it back in with the heel of her hand. She smiles, head lolling like a marionette's. "Sorry, baby." Her voice comes out strained. "I wasn't expecting company. I'm sure you understand." In a sickle of citrus moonlight, Adeline Marcus smiles up at you with shell-pale gums. Adeline Marcus died on the 31st of October and was buried a week later, the date on her gravestone a month shy of her 18th birthday. In the court, the boys would claim it was an accident, that they didn't know she was inside. For better or worse, you believe them. The fingers striking out matchboxes, the beer cans constellating the sidewalk. A prank gone too far, the wrong place, the wrong time. It doesn't have to be on purpose. She didn't have to be home. The coroner ruled it suffocation. But all you can imagine is flame like a stiff palm, striking over and over. Adeline had crawled from the mouth of the home on her hands and knees. She was dead by the time she reached the pavement, her Sunday dress singed up to her knees, the dress you knew well enough. Either way, the boys were left with 25 to life, and the Marcas were left with a dead daughter, a ring of ash like chalk on the pavement. You were left with a misplaced guilt, like hunger, a guilt like an Ouroboros, choking on the tail, swallowing the head, eating yourself alive and being unable to stop, even as it consumes you. Because this wasn't the sort of thing that happened to good people. You watch water curl down your shower drain, carrying with it mortuary makeup, kaleidoscopic insects, and jasmine bubbles. Strings of dirt stretched out like sinew. The body's head rests on her knees, vertebrae needling through her back like a line of molars. The electric lights wash her green, dark veins rooted under brittle skin. She turns her face to the shower head and picks at the powdery sediment under her fingernails. The shower floor is a mess of grit. And you think of a child scooping up the sand. You turn the heat up until it scalds and scrub mildew from the base of the shower door. You think, if you can only get everything clean, everything will be all right. She turns her head and looks at you through eyes obscured by glass paneling. She says, "It's not as bad as all that." I don't even think I felt a thing, but she says it through lips the color of spoiled plums, so the sentiment doesn't ring true. You lift threadbare towels from the bottoms of your linen closet. You walk 3 times around your block and return to a corpse sat on your sofa like she has nowhere better to be. There are ants in your sugar bowl. You try to remove them, lift their crystal-knotted bodies on the prong of a fork, but they slip between the gaps, and you are left with a mess bigger than when you started. Tea-brown sludge bleeding from thoraxes and the stink of vinegar. There's a dead girl on your sofa, but let's focus on the ants in your sugar bowl. The way they thread through cysts of white like veins on a leaf, like the capillaries that run through the skin of your face. You make tea anyway. You add too much milk and sit cross-legged in front of the body. She stares at you. You stare back. The two of you drink, and ribbons of watery milk pour clean out her trachea, the gaping hole in her chest. But she doesn't stop drinking until you do. "You're not looking at me," she says. "Not really." "Yes, I am." You twist your hands in the shag carpet. "Aren't I now?" "No," she says. "You're not." You leave your teacup on the floor, saucer an iris of yellow, and go upstairs. You take 2 cigarettes from the carton squashed on your father's desk, and then think better of it. Press down with your heel until tobacco dissipates into the tawny carpet. You change your bed sheets twice. Eggshell white. No, gray with peonies. You make a second cup of tea. When you get back to the room, the body is still there. You are looking at her. You are not looking at her. "Do I disgust you?" she says. "No." She shakes her head, dark hair plastered to her shoulders like reeds. "No more than I always did. You need to sleep." You say, "Baby." She tilts her head to one side. "Sleeping is all I've ever done." The last time you saw Adeline Marcus alive was in the back of a stranger's car, parked on a stranger's street, with the taste of a stranger's tequila fresh between your lips. You were never too built for parties, so the outcome was a pair of girls who looked like they were playing dress-up. Blousy dresses with sleeves like a nun's. Thrift store necklaces noosing your necks. Shoplifted lipstick, which she hid beneath her mattress. More wax than pigment. But in the citrus peel of street lights, in the low trill of distant music, the two of you looked beautiful. She had her legs curled under her and was sitting sideways in the back seat, her hand resting on your knee, and the other palmed against the window, a song on her lips that you couldn't quite place. You were too close, but it was night, and everyone was inside and drunk. And sometimes we all need to feel closer than we should be, to lose ourselves a little. The song melted on her lips, swallowed into the limp press of salvia and booze. And you said something like, "I think I should go home now." And she said something like, "Have another drink." And so you did. You let her pour the liquor into the flimsy mouths of red plastic cups and watched her swallow. She said, "You're so pretty." And you said, "I think you should stop." And she said, "Just let me say that one thing." And you wanted to say, "Stop fucking looking at me like that." And you wanted to say, "I want to crawl inside you and make a life for myself in the city of your mind." And you wanted to say, "Let's just be quiet. Let's just not talk. Let's just not ruin a good thing by telling the truth." Instead, you pushed open the passenger door, stumbled out onto the skin of vein blue sidewalk. "I'm going home now." The body lays with her back to your bed, hands worming in the floral sheets, chestnut hair spilling across her throat, past the ballpoint pen-marred bedposts. Over the gray skin of her forehead, you are thinking about the silken mouth of a coffin. You are thinking of how she looked when you pulled her from the rose mouth of heaven. The radiator hums. A lace curtain bellies your open window. She rolls over onto her side, slots her hands together like pieces of a decaying jigsaw puzzle. You still can't even look at me. Her mouth moves too slowly, words like chewing gum. "Why am I here, Bet? What's it for?" There are pink crescent moons on the bed of your palms from the bite of your nails. She pulls her knees to her chest, and a bone cracks. She pulls her knees to her chest, and a molar tumbles from between her keyhole lips. "You can only love me when I'm not here. You can only love me when there's nothing left to love." You press your cheek to the cool spread of linen beside her. You listen to the steady beat of your heart, the way you can feel it in your fingertips, entirely singular. Don't tell anyone. You say, "Did you want it to die with me, Beta?" She shifts, and her hair falls against the nape of your neck. Were you glad it was silenced? "Don't tell anyone." You say again, She sighs, lays herself back down, so you're face to face. Crooked nose, eye pulling from its socket. The onset of gray-green decay wreathing her jaw. The smell of soil and rot and cicada-heavy nighttime. Who could I tell? She brushes your hand. I'm not really here, and suddenly you can imagine it is your fists splitting beer cans in two, like overripe fruit. It is your fingers on the matchbox, your fingers striking out. But you both know the house would still be on fire, and you both know you'd leave alone. You take her hand. You put your face in the crook of her neck and beg forgiveness from a ghost, witness to my own funeral. The darkness came first, then awareness. Not the gentle awakening from sleep, but a violent snap into consciousness, like a circuit suddenly completing. I existed, suspended in perfect blackness, my mind racing while my body lay still as carved stone. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I couldn't move. Yet I wasn't suffocating. Instead, I existed in a state of suspended animation, my consciousness trapped in an immobile shell. Voices filtered through the darkness, muffled at first, then gradually clearer. A somber baritone resonated above me. Russell Mercer was a man of passion and conviction. In his 47 years, he touched many lives with his generosity and spirit. My name, my age, my eulogy. Panic surged through my mind like an electrical storm, but my pulse remained undetectable. I was at my own funeral. The realization crystallized with horrifying clarity. I was presumed dead, yet fully, agonizingly aware. The air around me was heavy with the mingled scents of lilies and formaldehyde. The polished wood of what I now understood to be my coffin felt cold against my back, even through the suit I'd been dressed in. My final suit, chosen without my consent. He leaves behind his loving wife, Margaret, and his daughter, Emily, both of whom he cherished above all else. Margaret. Her face appeared in my mind, soft brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, chestnut hair that caught the light, slender fingers that had touched my face just days ago. Or had it been longer? Time had become fluid, unreliable. I strained against my paralysis, willing just one finger to twitch, one eyelid to flutter. Nothing. My body remained a prison of flesh, unresponsive to my desperate commands. As the prayer ended, footsteps approached. The coffin creaked slightly as someone leaned over it. A drop of moisture, a tear, fell onto my cheek and slid down to my ear. I couldn't even flinch at the sensation. Oh, Russell. Margaret's voice, choked with emotion. I'll miss you so much. Her words should have comforted me. Instead, they sent a chill through my paralyzed form. Something in her tone, some subtle note beneath the grief, registered as wrong, like an instrument slightly out of tune, not enough for most to notice, but jarring to those who knew the true sound. Memory flickered like a faltering flame. The night before, what I thought was my death. Margaret bringing me a glass of whiskey. The unusual bitter aftertaste. The creeping numbness that had started in my fingertips and spread inward. My heartbeat slowing. Her face watching. Not with horror or concern, but with patience. The tranquil passage process is revolutionary, a professional voice explained above me. Dr. Howard, I presumed, the mortician from Serenity Gardens Memorial. The synthetic preservation compound allows natural death processes to conclude while preventing decomposition. The funeral home's specialization in this advanced method now seemed like cruel irony. I was trapped in the midpoint between mortality and preservation, held in stasis by chemicals that maintained my appearance, while my consciousness remained horrifyingly intact. And you're certain he's gone? Emily's voice, my daughter, 24 years old, analytical like me, suspicious of convenient truths. Even in my state, pride flickered within me at her questioning tone. Standard protocol requires a 24-hour waiting period before final sealing, Dr. Howard continued. It's mostly tradition, of course. We'll complete the preservation process tomorrow morning, 24 hours. A window of opportunity. That's thoughtful, Margaret remarked, her voice tight. Though I can't imagine why we'd need to wait. The scent of her perfume, vanilla and amber, drifted over me as she leaned closer to the coffin. I felt her fingers brush against mine, a feather-light touch that arranged my hands more perfectly over my chest. The law requires it, Dr. Howard replied, his tone professionally neutral. State regulations for the tranquil passage method are quite specific. I heard Margaret's slight intake of breath, so subtle that only someone who had shared a bed with her for 15 years would recognize it as frustration. The paralysis from the tetrodotoxin. I was certain now that's what she had used. Left me unable even to regulate my awareness. I couldn't sleep, couldn't drift into unconsciousness to escape this nightmare. I could only think, remember, and realize with growing horror what had happened. A door opened. The sound of high heels clicking against the floor grew louder, then stopped beside my coffin. Russell. Margaret's voice, no longer performatively grief-stricken. I need to make sure you understand why this is happening. Her fingertips traced the edge of the coffin, inches from my face. You never truly saw me, did you? Always focused on your own needs, your own desires. 15 years in your shadow, adjusting myself to fit your expectations. Her voice remained quiet, controlled. Did you know I started painting again last year? No, you didn't notice the studio I set up in the garage. Just like you didn't notice when I stopped loving you 3 years ago. Her words sliced through me more effectively than any scalpel. I hadn't noticed. I could have just left, she continued, her voice thoughtful. Divorce is so common, isn't it? But then I'd get half of everything at best. This way. She paused, and I could almost see her smile. This way, I get it all. The house, the investments, the insurance, a fresh start. The funny thing is, she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper, no one will ever suspect. Your high blood pressure, your family history of heart problems, everyone saw this coming eventually. Just not quite so soon. 24 hours, she murmured. Then it will be over. I'm sorry it has to be this way, Russell. But I've waited long enough for my life to begin. Time distorted in the coffin. Only the subtle changes in ambient sound gave me any sense of time's passage. The paralysis was absolute. Yet paradoxically, I felt everything. The slight pressure of the coffin's padded interior, the unnatural stiffness of my starched collar. Most of all, I felt the crushing weight of Margaret's betrayal pressing against my chest more heavily than any physical constraint. The sound of the funeral home's front door opening interrupted my thoughts. Multiple footsteps approached my room. I just want to see him one more time. Emily's voice, tight with emotion. Before tomorrow. Of course, Miss Mercer. Take all the time you need. Dr. Howard's professional compassion. Dad. Emily's voice was closer now, directly above me. If only I could move. If only I could signal to her. My daughter, the one person who might question, who might look closely enough to see the truth. He doesn't look right, she said suddenly. I'm sorry? Dr. Howard's voice, confused. Something's off. His color. It's not like when someone's passed. Emily's voice grew firmer. And look at his eyes. The eyelids naturally settle in a slightly open position sometimes, Dr. Howard explained. We generally close them fully before the final preservation. No, it's not that. I swear they moved. My consciousness surged at her words. Yes, Emily. Look closer, Miss Mercer. Dr. Howard's voice was gentle but firm. I understand this is incredibly difficult. Many people experience these moments, seeing what they wish to see. I'm not imagining it, Emily insisted. Something's wrong. Dad had this thing about being buried alive. It was like a phobia for him. He made me promise I'd always check. always be sure. She was right. After reading Poe as a teenager, I'd developed an irrational fear of premature burial. The bitter irony of my current situation wasn't lost on me. I want another doctor to look at him. Emily's voice cracked slightly. Please, just to be sure. That would be unusual, Dr. Howard said carefully, but not impossible. However, we would need next of kin approval. That would be your mother. Then call her, Emily said. Call her right now. The sound of a phone being dialed. Rings echoed through the quiet room. Margaret Mercer. My wife's voice, slightly surprised. After brief explanations, Margaret's voice acquired a careful neutrality. Emily, she finally said, softly chiding. You're traumatized. We all are. But this isn't healthy. Mom, please. Dr. Howard, Margaret interrupted. Is there any medical reason to believe my husband isn't deceased? No, Mrs. Mercer. All standard protocols were followed. Then I think we need to accept reality and allow the grieving process to proceed naturally. The call ended. I felt a surge of desperate hope as Dr. Howard moved closer to the coffin. I'll perform a standard examination, he explained to Emily. I felt his cool, gloved fingers press against my neck, searching for a pulse that the tetrodotoxin had rendered imperceptible. He lifted one of my eyelids fully. The first change in my visual field since awakening in this nightmare. This was my chance. If any part of me could move, any minute twitch or dilation, now was the moment. Pupillary response is absent, Dr. Howard noted clinically. No sign of cardiovascular activity. No! I screamed within the prison of my mind. I'm here! I'm alive! Wait! Emily's voice was sharp. Do that again. Check his eyes again. Dr. Howard obliged, lifting my eyelid once more. I swear I saw something, Emily insisted. A tiny movement. There are certain substances that can create a death-like state, he said carefully. Extremely rare cases, but in my 40 years of practice, I've read about them. What are you saying? Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. Given your concerns and certain subtle anomalies I'm observing, I believe we should delay the final preservation process until we can conduct more thorough tests. Just to be absolutely certain, in the stillness of my paralysis, a spark of hope flared to life. I was alone with Dr. Howard. After Emily left to make arrangements for additional tests, he had remained in the viewing room. Mr. Mercer, he finally said, his voice low and measured. If you can hear me, I want you to know that I suspect what might have happened to you. In my younger years, I worked briefly in Haiti, he continued. I witnessed cases there, substances that could induce states virtually indistinguishable from death. Tetrodotoxin is one such agent. Yes, my mind screamed. That's it. The door opened. The familiar sound of Margaret's heels approached. Dr. Howard, she said, her voice carefully modulated. "I'd like a word." Their footsteps receded, leaving me alone once more. Minutes stretched endlessly until the door opened again. "I appreciate your understanding, Dr. Howard." Margaret's voice had regained its composure. Something in his tone had changed. The certainty, the suspicion from earlier, had been replaced by a strange formality. Dr. Howard's footsteps retreated, and the door closed, leaving me alone with my would-be murderer. "Well," Margaret said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "that was inconvenient. Your dutiful daughter nearly complicated things," she continued. "But fortunately, Dr. Howard is a practical man. When faced with the choice between pursuing an unlikely theory or accepting a generous donation to the funeral home's renovation fund, he made the sensible decision. Cold horror washed over me. She had bought his silence, his complicity. "The tests won't happen," she explained calmly. "Instead, they'll complete the preservation process tonight. A small adjustment to the schedule. That's all." Her perfume, once comforting, now sickening, enveloped me as she leaned closer. "This isn't just about money. This is about freedom. From your expectations. From your subtle control. The truth is, I've besaid for years in our marriage," she said. "Now it's just making official what's been true all along. One of us needed to go, and you always said you'd die for me. Now you get to keep that promise." Time passed, minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. The door opened again, and multiple sets of footsteps entered. "We'll begin the final preservation now," Dr. Howard's voice announced. "Mrs. Mercer has signed all the necessary authorizations." I felt hands positioning equipment near the coffin, heard the soft hiss of pressurized systems being prepared. "Begin the process," Dr. Howard instructed. I heard a mechanical sound, then the subtle hiss of gas being released into the coffin. The door burst open with a crash. "Stop!" Emily's voice, breathless and commanding. "Stop right now. Miss Mercer, your mother has..." "I don't care what she authorized," Emily interrupted fiercely. "I have a court order. This is highly unusual," Dr. Howard said, his voice tight. "Judge Harriman is a family friend," Emily explained, "and he takes potential medical malpractice very seriously. This emergency order requires independent verification before any further procedures. And I've brought someone who can help with that," Emily continued. "Dr. Langhorne from County General. She specializes in toxicology." "Dr. Howard?" A new female voice greeted coolly. "I understand there's some question about this death certificate. I'd like to perform some tests immediately." I felt the preservation gas being shut off. Hands moved around me, unfastening something near the coffin's edge. "I'm drawing blood for immediate analysis," Dr. Langhorne explained. "And I'm administering a counteragent that will neutralize certain paralytic toxins if present." Something cold entered my veins. The sensation, the first active feeling, beyond passive awareness since this nightmare began was shockingly intense. Hands moved over me, clinical and thorough. Fingers pressed against my neck, lifted my eyelids, checked my reflexes. "Interesting," Dr. Langhorne murmured. "Very interesting." And then, a miracle. The slightest twitch in my index finger, imperceptible to anyone not watching for it, but to me, it was an earthquake, a revolution, a resurrection. "There!" Emily's voice, triumphant. "His finger moved. I saw it." "Indeed," Dr. Langhorne confirmed, her voice calm but urgent. "We need to get him to the hospital immediately. This man is not dead. He's been poisoned with a neurotoxin that mimics death." The room erupted into activity. I felt my body being lifted, transferred, moved with urgent care. "Someone should inform Mrs. Mercer," Dr. Howard suggested, his voice strained. "Oh, don't worry about that," Emily said, her voice carrying a hardness I'd never heard before. "The police are already speaking with her. They were very interested in the contents of her evening tea." "Her tea?" Dr. Langhorne asked. "Yes," Emily replied, and I could hear the grim satisfaction in her voice. "The one containing the same substance that nearly killed my father. The one I've been replacing with harmless herb tea for the past week, ever since I found her research on tetrodotoxin on her laptop." As they wheeled me toward the ambulance, I felt the paralysis receding further. A finger twitch became a hand flexing. An eyelid flickered. My lungs expanded slightly more with each breath. I was coming back from the dead. And Margaret was going to a cell. Justice, like life itself, sometimes hangs by the thinnest of threads. But when that thread holds, resurrection is possible. Santa, the hitman, the hospice smells like antiseptic and failed dreams. A Christmas-themed air freshener dangles from the IV stand, swaying in time with my father's mechanical wheezing. It smells like cinnamon and regret. The fluorescent lights hum, drowning out the morphine's slow drip. Hi, I'm the man who never amounted to anything. The trophyless disappointment. If life is a race, I'm the guy who tripped in the first 10 feet and never got back up. 35 years old, still renting, and my most significant contribution to society is a viral video of me accidentally setting fire to a microwave burrito. That's me, proud owner of a pile of unwashed dishes and a credit score so low it could run for public office. I sit slouched in this corner, watching my dad suck on life like it's a particularly stubborn milkshake. He's enormous. Round face, round belly, round everything. A human snowman, melted into a hospice bed. The kind of guy who built his whole life on being likable. For 30 years, He played Santa Claus at the mall. Not just any Santa, mind you. He was the Santa. The one people drove 4 counties over to see. His face still pops up on Christmas cards across the Midwest. A local legend, a walking, jolly Norman Rockwell painting. And me? I'm the guy who gave him a $10 Amazon gift card for Christmas. You'd think that's why he's dying. The look he gave me when he opened it. He beckons me closer, his hand shaking like a rusty wind-up toy. Come here, kiddo. Yeah, sure, I say, dragging the chair closer. It screeches against the linoleum like its legs are fighting with the floor. What is it this time? Another story about how you single-handedly saved Christmas at the mall in '93. His laugh comes out like a wheeze caught in a blender. Then he stops, face turning deadly serious, eyes boring into mine. I've got a confession, kiddo. Something big. I lean back. Here we go again. Oh, great. Did you save Christmas again? He laughs, shakes his head. His smile, faint but still there, cracks like old plaster. No. Listen to me, kiddo. I killed people. I was a hitman. The words hit me like a sucker punch to the ribs. His eyes twinkle with something far from Christmas cheer. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Not because I believed him, but because some part of me wanted to. Like, even in death, Dad had to be bigger than life. Then the ridiculousness hit me, and I laughed. Hard. Too hard. Jesus, Dad, did the morphine knock your last screw loose? You don't think a guy with fake snow in his eyebrows could carry out a clean kill? Do you? Dad's grin spreads like butter on burnt toast, his cheeks wobbling like he's auditioning for Jell-O's next ad campaign. I stare. Words feel stuck somewhere between my brain and my tongue, like traffic on the I-5 during rush hour. I've got a list of things I never expected to hear from my father. I love you. I'm proud of you. There's a secret trust fund hidden in the walls. But this takes the cake, and then assassinates the baker. You're messing with me, I finally manage. Is this one of those morphine fever dreams? Should I call the nurse? Blink once for yes. Dad coughs out a laugh, deep and phlegmy, shaking his head. No joke. I was good at it too. Seasonal work was the perfect cover. Everyone sees Santa as a big, harmless teddy bear. No one suspects Santa Claus of carrying a 9mm Glock. I blink. Hard. He's lost it. The man's gone off the deep end, dragged the Christmas tree, the reindeer, and the inflatable snowman with him. I had a code, he says, his voice dropping to a low rasp, like he's auditioning for The Godfather. Never moms, never kids, and no one who liked Christmas. I rub my temples. So you're telling me all those business trips to Reno weren't about fixing mall contracts? Nope. He pops the P like he's proud. They were about fixing people. Your old man was a regular Mr. Clean. And you expect me to believe this? He leans forward, a Herculean effort given his state. Remember the upstairs neighbor at our old place? The guy who played techno at 2 a.m.? I nod slowly, stomach sinking. You said he moved. I moved him. His grin widens. To a landfill. Permanently. You're not serious, I whisper, but my voice cracks. Oh God, he's serious. Go to my apartment and look for a box labeled Santa's Naughty List, top shelf of my closet. See for yourself. I'm halfway to the door when the heart monitor gives up. The line going flat, like it's tired of pretending he had time left. Dad's apartment is a shrine to Christmas. Not the classy Pottery Barn kind of Christmas. This is the Walmart on clearance kind. Everywhere you look, there's a red and green assault on the senses. Tinsel dangles like garish cobwebs. A nutcracker army lines the windowsill, their paint chipped like they've been through a war. Fake snow dusts every surface, not sprinkled, but dumped, like he'd been trying to recreate a blizzard indoors. I kick a pile of it near the couch. It puffs up, glittering. The closet, though. That's where things get creepy. Rows of Santa suits hang in perfect order, sorted by decade. The 80s suits are polyester atrocities, faded red, like tomato soup, left in the sun. The newer ones are lush, rich velvets. There's even a Santa pimp cane leaning in the corner. Because, of course, there is. And the smell? That weird mothball meets candy cane funk. It clings to your clothes, gets in your hair. I'd need 3 showers and a priest to feel clean again. That's when I see it. A box on the top shelf, labeled in Sharpie. Santa's Naughty List. My stomach drops. No way that this is real. No way. The box creaks as I pull it down. Years of dust exploding in my face. Inside, the first thing I see is a pair of cracked glasses. Thick, Coke bottle lenses, scratched to hell. Still smeared with something. A fingerprint, maybe. Or worse. Intrigued, I pick them up gingerly, like they might bite. It had a Christmas gift tag hanging from it, reading, "The neighbor who played ABBA on repeat." Next, there's a gold wedding ring, heavy, engraved with Forever Denise. This one has tag dangling from it that reads, "Hired by Denise to take care of her abusive, cheating husband." She gave me fresh baked cookies, still warm from the oven, too. The box bulged with trophies, Christmas tags swinging off them like tiny glittery alibis. At the bottom, a mall Santa hat, its white fur trim stiff and crusted with something dark brown. Blood? Hot chocolate? Both? My hand hovers over it, like touching. It might connect me to him, but I jerk back. My heart pounds in my ears. This is insane. This is nuts. This is impressive. Turns out, Dad wasn't just a professional at making kids smile. He was a professional at making people disappear. The thing about secrets is they're sticky. Once you hear one, it clings to you like gum on a shoe, no matter how much you scrape. Dad's confession isn't just sticking, it's metastasizing. The more I think about it, the more I see his life wasn't two separate halves. Santa and hitman, jolly old saint and silent assassin. It's all the same guy. And now, I'm the one holding the bag. He's dead. The town's favorite. Mall. Santa. Gone to that big workshop in the sky. Kids will cry when they hear. Some mom will bring them to the mall next week, hoping to see his stupid, twinkly eyes and hear his gravelly laugh. Instead, they'll get some substitute in a cheap suit, the kind who smells like whiskey and regret. That'll be Dad's legacy. A hole in the lives of every snot-nosed kid who sat on his lap, unless I tell the truth. If I do, it won't be crying kids. No. The whole town will lose its collective mind. Imagine this headline. Breaking news. Killer. Kringle caught dead. The local paper will have a field day. They'll dig up every photo of him, grinning in his red suit, surrounded by smiling children, and slap it next to words like murderer in bold block letters. The tabloids will pick it up. Every dumb podcaster with a microphone will start calling him the silent Santa Slayer. And me? I'll be the idiot who ruined Christmas for the whole town. The funeral smelled like peppermint and formaldehyde. Someone decided Dad's last ride should look like an after-Christmas clearance aisle. Red and white draped the lid, as if trying to sugarcoat the whole thing. And of course, the mall workers showed up in elf hats, because nothing says, "We respect your dead father," like polyester and jingling bells. The service started with a speech from Jerry, the guy who managed the mall. Jerry had a voice like a dying accordion and the charisma of wet cardboard. But he tried. He wasn't just Santa, Jerry said, his words wobbling. He was Christmas. He saved Christmas. Saved it? Like he pulled Christmas from a burning building? You mean he sat in a chair for 8 hours a day while toddlers screamed in his face? Then came the slideshow. Dad with kids. Dad shaking hands. Dad eating cookies that probably came with handwritten death requests. And now it was my turn. I stepped up to the podium, clutching my notes. My palms were slick, my mouth dry. Every eyeball in the room locked onto me like I was the halftime show. Here lies Santa, the town legend, and here comes his loser kid, fumbling for words. I cleared my throat. Dad was unforgettable, a safe start. Too safe. My hands shook. I glanced down at my notes, then up at the crowd. Their faces blurred. My brain buzzed because, my voice cracked. He was Santa, and a hitman. The room froze. A collective gasp sucked all the air out. Then Jerry laughed, the kind of laugh that makes you wonder if someone's choking. Santa? A hitman? More laughter erupted. Next, you'll tell us Rudolph ran a dip-fighting ring. I blinked. The crowd thought I was joking. Thank God. I faked a chuckle, the kind that burns your throat on the way out. Yeah, I guess he really killed it as Santa, huh? The groans at my pun covered my slip-up, and I pivoted. Hard. But seriously, Dad was the most unforgettable Santa this town ever had. They clapped. Some people wiped tears. And me? I stared at the casket, wondering what was worse, burying the truth with him, or walking around with it, lodged in my head forever. The funeral was barely over when he found me. Grizzled guy in a trench coat, the kind of face that looks like it's been carved out of driftwood. He shook my hand, his grip hard and dry, and said he knew my dad. Frankie, he said, like I should already know who he was. An old associate of your dad's. Associate? What kind of associate? Did Santa have a union? A reindeer mafia? Sorry for your loss, Frankie said, not sounding sorry at all. Your dad was a legend, one of the best in the biz. The biz? I asked, the words tasting like sewer milk. Frankie smirked, like I'd just failed some kind of test. He opened his trench coat, not for a gun, or a bomb, or a flashing incident, but for a business card. The font was a little too cheerful, a little too Comic Sans for what it said. Kringle and Associates. Holiday solutions for your problems. I stared at it like it might bite me. This is a joke, right? Frankie leaned in, breath heavy with something cheap and lethal. Your dad wasn't the only one, he said, his voice like gravel, rolled in honey. He pulled a candy cane from his pocket, twisting it between his fingers. Seasonal work. It's got its advantages. Keeps things clean. He paused, watching me, waiting, like there was something I was supposed to say. It's the perfect cover. Frankie smiled, teeth yellowed like a dog just pissed in the snow. He straightened up, sliding his hands into his coat. Your dad always said you'd make a great Santa. You've got the look. My dad spent my whole life teaching me things I didn't realize were lessons. How to lie with a smile, how to disappear in a crowd, how to keep secrets. I always thought he was preparing me for life, but maybe he was just preparing me for this. Frankie's words hung in the air like cigarette smoke, clinging to my skin. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Frankie tipped an imaginary hat and walked away, disappearing into the kind of fog that makes you doubt he was ever really there. I looked at the card again, the words staring back like a dare. Kringle and Associates. Dad always said to find a job that suits you. But some jobs find you. In the distance, I heard bells, maybe wind chimes, maybe the Salvation Army guy packing up. Who knows? What I do know is that I hate kids. I love cookies. And I could probably pull off the beard. Goodbye, Mary. It's funny how I spent my whole life forming relationships, working, trying to be a good person, and building something out of nothing to feel safe, secure, and happy. It's even funnier how it all went away in a matter of few days. A few days that rocked my world, ruined all my foundations, and forced me to take steps I would never imagine to have to take. My black boots slightly sink in the mud, and I swear at myself that I chose this specific day for such an unimportant matter. Didn't the weather prediction say it will rain all night? Maybe. I haven't paid much attention to things so trivial. I fix my black coat, seeing it has lifted slightly in the corner, and feel a cold breeze wash over my bare legs. I should have worn leggings or at least tights, but I couldn't find any black ones. And surely I should not be wearing any other color to the funeral. It's hardly a funeral, though. I am the only person here, watching the freshly dug ground and the sun reflecting stone gravestone. Marianne Robinson, the grave says. Her date of birth and death are also engraved, but no other message, like others have. There are no loving daughter, or she left us too soon, or some cheesy poem quote about inevitable death and the horror of young people dying. She was only 26 years old. It definitely is too young to die. She's had her whole life ahead of her. And now, she's buried on some old, almost abandoned cemetery where no one will visit her, bring fresh flowers, or tend to her grave. Marianne was a fearful person. She was too scared to stand up to her toxic manager at work and let them bully her. She was in a relationship with a man she didn't love because being on her own terrified her. She never voiced her feelings, fought for what she believed, or chased her dreams. She was living an anxious life and never tried to change it. I sit down at the bench just a couple of steps away from the grave and I keep looking at the stone, as if it is going to speak to me, give me some words of comfort or reassurance. But nothing comes my way, except the cold wind, a not very warm sun flashing my eyes. I take a deep breath and put my hands on my knees. You had it coming, I almost whisper, not wanting for my words to be stolen by the wind and scattered across the land. You very damn well had it coming, and you know it. Saying it doesn't ease my hurt. If anything, it makes me more angry. Because it is true. You should have quit it when you had a chance. It is too late now, I guess. I take another deep breath, trying to calm down my emotions. The sun hides behind the miserable clouds, and the windy breeze feels even colder now. My whole body shivers in response, and muscles tense up. A mostly cloudy and cold day is a perfect setting for funeral. Makes it easier to leave the graves behind and dive into the warmth of a car or a house. But not me. I can't leave just yet. Not until I finish what I started. Marianne lived in a belief that if she consciously stayed out of trouble and allowed people to walk all over her, she would be at peace. It worked for a while. The problems didn't seem like problems back then. She forgave everyone who hurt her, never questioned anyone's actions or motives, agreed to everything she was thrown at. It was the ultimate goal, wasn't it? Until it stopped working. The trouble came looking for her, and she couldn't keep it away, regardless of how hard she tried. That was the first time she fought back, stood her ground, and followed her beliefs. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. And now she's stuck in this endless loop of bad decisions she can never make right. And it still hurts me to know that Marianne will never be fully free. I glance at my purse that I placed next to me on the bench and swallow hard, feeling my anxiety rise once again. It has to be done. I remind myself, hoping it will bring me some courage. It doesn't, but it was worth a try. It has been a while since that information has been dropped on me, and the steps I need to take been explained. I have had enough time to process and digest everything. Yet I'm still worried. It is an incredibly serious situation, and I cannot predict how this will affect me in the future. Yet I have no choice. The worst thing has already happened. Now I just have to keep covering my tracks to stay hidden, stay a shadow that no one can catch. And killing Marianne Robinson was the first step. I reach for my bag, take out her passport, and a small, handheld shovel. The top corner of the passport is already snipped off, as per the instructions from the government received when I registered Mary's death. The next steps seem easy to make, but yet feel the hardest. They feel final, as if killing someone is not final enough. Reluctantly, I open the passport and look at the photo. I used to look so mediocre back then, with my uneven fringe, refusal to wear any makeup, official and modest clothes. I didn't even smile for that picture. Apparently, it was the rules. I then glance at the name written next to the photo, and I take another deep breath. My passport is still valid for another 2 years. Or it would be, hadn't I cut off the corner. But it doesn't matter. I am dead. Officially, I had to die. The work I will be doing is dangerous, risky, and very important. All the ties to my previous life had to be cut, and that's why Marianne had to die. For Cassie to be born. I approach the grave and kneel on the grass. With a pounding heart, I dig a foot-deep hole into the fresh ground and gently place the passport there. After filling the hole back up, I stand up and keep staring at my grave. "Goodbye, Mary," I whisper, with a single tear rolling down my cheek. I don't wipe it. I allow it to slowly drop on the ground. Just another dead girl. Underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black, lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article, published by a local newspaper, reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight. Yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, no, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow, and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party, feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about, if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly? Cindy? Carrie? Something with a Z, though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes. But no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl. the one who got scared at every creak in the dark, the one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent. But when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her before the trip had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast. Or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries, where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in, enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens, and I'll fade away like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater. And then the red one enters. A great artist once said, "Color. What a deep and mysterious language, the language of dreams." Depending on the situation or distraction, this philosophy unquestionably plays an integral part in Herbert Truelove's meandering existence, floating and gliding from one state of contented, colorful contemplation to the next, regardless of the consequences. It is Tuesday. Spring has just about sprung, and a dapple of weak sunlight is finally threatening to break through the clouds that have been in perpetual domination since last October. At least it seems that way to Herb, who, as we speak, is in a daydream of sorts, caught between the grim reality of his humdrum day job and the fantastical scenes that his mind is playing out to him. Today, softly tinted marshmallow cats and dogs with expertly curated mustaches and jaunty little hats are fleeting across his venturing mind. Everything is and hazy around the edges. The sun's faint rays kiss the scene with hues of pale yellow, blue, and pink. And across the dusty blue sky, cloud-like forms are enticing him away to somewhere far beyond the gray walls of reality, where Herb's flesh and bones exist. True love? Shrill and pointed as ever, the bespectacled and suited Geraldine Ledbetter, a storm cloud personified, marches across the office and places herself between the window and Herb's reverie. She casts the darkest kind of shadow across the desk, perhaps the sort you might encounter in a terrible nightmare. Are the figures for the board meeting ready yet? The words thunder reverberating in Herb's ears. But he is not easily fazed. Herb has learned that it is best to do whatever is asked of him. Herb knows that it's wise to keep his head down and complete his work to an adequate standard, so that it attracts minimal attention. Herb knows where his mind would rather be. The mustachioed marshmallow cats and dogs saunter away towards the rapidly graying clouds, and Herb, rubbing his eyes, waggles the gray plastic mouse to motion his laptop back into life. "Half an hour," mutters Herb, as he adjusts himself to the reality that surrounds him. The cats and dogs disappearing into the cloudy horizon. His tired eyes flicker across the incomplete spreadsheet that occupies the screen. Conditional formatting highlights the cells that need to be completed in a garish, bright yellow. As Herb knows from bitter experience, the department heads are notoriously tardy in submitting their month-end figures, and this month is no exception. And that will include the projections for the second quarter. The dark outline of Geraldine Ledbetter demands rather than questions. Of course, around the edge of Geraldine's heavy form, Herb can see a butterfly hovering outside the window, its golden-tipped wings unusually early for the time of year, but splendid all the same as it flutters in the mid-morning light. On my desk, by 11 sharp then, Then Geraldine, engulfed within her ominous cloud, rumbles back through the office and is gone. The light resumes its place on Herb's desk, and his pupils contract for a moment. As he refocuses, he watches the butterfly as it continues to dance outside the window, coaxing and tantalizing, almost coquettishly, if a butterfly could assume such a demeanor. "Hey, Herb, look at me." Herb runs his hand over his chin, catching the patch of stubble that he's missed during this morning's shave. The empty yellow cells blink at him. Herb is no fool, of course. He is something of a spreadsheet genius, and all the projections, graphs, and charts will update automatically as soon as he inputs the missing figures. He turns his attention away from the butterfly for a moment and flicks to his emails. Nothing. 5 department heads have still not submitted their figures. Herb detests having to chase them. They make him feel insignificant, as though they have more important things to think about than a few numbers. Numbers that you should bloody well know if you had any clue what you were doing, thinks Herb. The tapping at the window draws his attention away from the screen. The butterfly is still there, and in the distance, pink and blue, marshmallow, cats and doigts with mustaches and jaunty hats are bounding along the treetops. The butterfly poses enigmatically on a small branch that grows out of the old brickwork, stretching and twitching its outstretched wings. Herb is so overwhelmingly compelled by the creature that he moves cautiously round to the other side of the desk and crouches down, the thinning fabric of his trousers straining at the knees as he does so. The glass separates his nose from the butterfly by less than an inch. Over the hills and the meadows, golden yellow with rapeseed and sunflowers, far too early for the time of year, but glorious all the same. The countryside is ablaze with color as Herb and the butterfly soar, dipping and flying over the landscape below, hanging on tightly to its wings, delighting in every swirl and swoop. Herb is surprised to see strange markings on the insect, not usual for this type. In between the clouds, the cats and dogs nod and doff their hats as he passes, and Herb strains his eyes against the wind, fascinated by the butterfly, curious to examine more closely its squiggles and shapes. Back at his desk, Herb recalls the markings, which were in fact numbers. 5 of them etched in fine, flowing lines across the butterfly's wings. He opens the spreadsheet and, compelled by something he knows not, he enters the numbers into the bright yellow cells, which immediately reformat to corporate gray. The bottom line updates, the graphs and charts complete. All is done. But the cell containing the overall projection for the next quarter is now red. This doesn't surprise Herb. The second quarter is always like that. So he prints off copies for the board meeting slides them onto Geraldine's desk whilst she's in the washroom, and disappears for an early lunch. Outside, the sun has burned away the hazy cloud of earlier, and the day promises to be a little warmer than of late. Herb buys a takeaway sandwich and coffee. Then, in the small memorial garden down the road from the office, he finds an empty bench facing the sun. He sips the coffee, letting the warm, milky substance trickle down his throat and warm his insides, the caffeine tingling through his veins. Herb closes his eyes. Blotches of red, orange, and green fill his vision as the light from the sun leaves its mark. The green shapes begin to move in slow, swirling motions, bumping off the red and orange like a crooked kaleidoscope. Herb recalls holding his eye to the brightly decorated tube, turning the colored beads, reflecting in the mirrors. In the distance, his mother is calling him in from the living room to go through to the kitchen for his dinner. The kaleidoscope falls to the floor, and the green swirls fill his vision as a formation of leaves and petals spin clockwise and then anti-clockwise, alternating, until a purple snake pokes its head through the center of the arrangement. It smiles. It's a pleasant enough smile, though perhaps verging on the sinister, and the corners of Herb's mouth twitch slightly. People passing through the memorial garden give him a wide berth. Herb sips the last of his tepid coffee, eats the ham sandwich, which is now lukewarm, and stretches his legs before heading back inside. As he passes the office window, he checks his reflection. Reasonable enough, if a little worn around the edges. But he notices that his shirt looks an odd color. Herb shakes his head. Just the light, and heads back into the office. Herb's stomach sinks as, returning to his desk, he sees the familiar outline of Geraldine against the window. But as he gets closer, he notices an expression on her face that he's never seen before. Not the usual storm cloud, more like a break in the weather, a lightening of the day. There's a faint flush of color to her cheeks, a softening of her usually harsh and critical eyes. Her blouse, usually a nondescript department store shade of grayish beige, now seems to emit a slight hint of pink, not bright enough to be obvious, but just enough to make Herb look twice. The board meeting went well, she says. The projections were in line with expectations. Good work, true love. Herb nods, not sure how to respond. She has never called his work good before. Ever. I need you to run some modeling, she continues. Future projections, based on recent trends. A few different scenarios. I want to see what we're looking at for the next couple of years. She turns to leave, then pauses. By the way, she adds, looking Herb up and down in a way that makes him feel like he's transparent. I like that shirt on you. You had a dark blue one on before, didn't you? Herb looks down. His shirt seems pale and washed out, and he's not entirely sure what color it had been earlier, his morning routine being somewhat chaotic. The first shirt out of the wardrobe usually suffices. Herb sits at his desk. For a moment, he glances towards the window as temptation draws him to contemplate for just a little while. But Geraldine's demeanor has startled him, setting him off balance. For the first time since starting with the firm, he feels compelled to produce what she wants as accurately and as promptly as he can. Herb exhales slowly and turns to the spreadsheet. Numbers and formulas are a place of comfort and security for him, and he begins to plan out the equations and tables of data that he needs. Everything is mapping into the right place. No errors flash, but his mind is slowly drifting. The warmth of the sun still lingers on his face. The coffee tingles in his bloodstream, and Herb's fingers hover over the keys. The marshmallow cats and dogs have returned, their sugary bodies bound across a soft, undulating pastel landscape, their hats perched askew at gravity-defying angles. Herb watches the beautiful hues of the world around them, gentle like childhood dreams. He smiles as they swirl and leap, admiring their peculiar hats and mustaches. Then there's a flicker, and something deeper in his mind stirs. Herb snaps back to the screen. The formatting is wrong. Purple cells. They hadn't been there before. He hadn't formatted them that way. Herb was sure of that. The empty spaces within them pulse ever so slightly, and Herb's stomach tightens as he recalls the numbers on the golden-tipped butterfly. The snake was purple. He tries to remember the patterns. Had there been numbers? Herb leans back in his chair and closes his eyes, trying to recall, attempting to re-summon the lunchtime dream. The marshmallow creatures appear again, bounding across rolling, gentle pistachio fields, warm, comforting, inviting. But that's not what he needs right now. The snake had been different. It had coiled through a spiral of violet and deep shades of green, its smile knowing, its movements slow and deliberate. Herb pushes deeper into the memory, searching for it, feeling the gentle marshmallow dreams resisting, as if trying to keep him away. Then he finds it. The kaleidoscope returns. "Your dinner's ready, Herbert." But the snake slithers from the swirling pattern of leaves, its scales shimmering in purple hues. And there they are, the numbers, etched in golden ink along its back, shifting and twisting as the creature moves. Herb returns to his desk with a jolt. His fingers move quickly before his waking mind erases what he's just seen. And with shaking hands, he enters the snake's numbers into the spreadsheet. The model updates, The figures align. Herb's heart thumps in his chest. The purple cells have turned gray, but he doesn't know what the new snake-derived data means. But when he prints the pages and places them on Geraldine's desk, she looks at him with something close to admiration. "Interesting," she murmurs. Geraldine chews her freshly painted lips as her eyes move across the sheets. "This changes things. Leave this with me, true love." Then a pause as she adjusts the chain of magenta beads that seem to have appeared around her neck. "Thank you." Later in the week, we find Herb reflecting on the events of the last couple of days. He's continually surprised and a little bewildered at the changes he sees in Geraldine's persona, gaining subtle hints of color in both her wardrobe and her demeanor. With every financial forecast or model that she requests, amidst wild daytime dreams and flickering spreadsheets, Herb delivers the goods. He knows he's making a good impression, but his daytime reveries are changing, showing him things he's never seen before, and he isn't sure how he feels about that. The faded and worn knees of his trousers have thinned further, now nearly transparent, and when he catches his reflection in the washroom mirror, the patchy stubble on his chin seems to be developing a rather gray tinge. Herb's comforting daydreams, full of soft and gentle color, seem to come less readily, and the pink and blue creatures keep on vanishing over the darkened horizon. The spring that threatened to flourish just days earlier has retreated back into winter, and a bitter easterly wind whips around every building and street corner. Today, it is Friday, and Geraldine wants the latest figures to review over the weekend. As ever, Herb is on point to deliver. It seems to him that the department heads have faded into obscurity. They approve the files that Herb emails to them without a second glance, and Geraldine continues to be enthralled, enchanted almost, by the tables and charts that Herb sets on her desk at every demand. This morning, Geraldine's blouse is a vibrant cornflower blue, her smile brighter, her voice lighter. She calls Herb into her office. "Herb?" she smiles. "Did she just call me Herb? The board members have noticed your work. They want you to take on some more experimental forecasting." Herb's eyes drift past Geraldine's shoulder. Through the window, he sees a slender man in a tight red suit balancing on the edge of the window ledge. He's grinning at Herb, opening and closing his suit jacket, revealing something, a code perhaps, and then quickly concealing it, smirking as he does so. Behind, in the distance, the soothing colors of pastel fields flicker as marshmallow cats and dogs try to draw Herb's attention. The scarlet character outside the window watches, waiting. "Herb!" Geraldine's voice punctures Herb's distraction. This could mean a promotion, more pay, more prestige. Think about it over the weekend. Herb rattles his head, bringing himself back into the moment. I'm sorry, Geraldine. It's been quite a week. He looks down at his hand. It looks paler than before, almost translucent under the harsh office lights. He swallows, his throat dry. I'll get those figures to you this morning, ready for the weekend. The spreadsheet gapes at Herb. It flickers. Cells that were accurate earlier are now showing HRF and other disturbing error codes that Herb has never seen before. Other cells are suddenly formatted in red, their borders animated, serpents slithering around each red cell. Herb looks out of the window across the gray sky where trees bend and sway in the wind and litter from the street blows up in gusts. The red-suited man peeps impishly around the corner of the window, just enough that Herb sees his menacing grin. Then he steps fully into view. Herb notices the purple snake wrapped around the man's left leg, and on his right shoulder sits a butterfly with golden tipped wings. Somewhere in the distance, in what feels like another world, a dream within a dream, the blue and pink marshmallow creatures are trying to reach him, their little hats bobbing as they bounce over clouds. But the scarlet presence is looming closer, toying with the buttons on his red jacket. Open or closed, it mouths through the glass. The butterfly flaps and the snake slithers, its purple scales gleaming, waiting for Herb to notice the fresh set of numbers along its back. As Herb closes his eyes, he finds himself at an unfamiliar crossroads. One path stretches away in soft, gentle hues. It feels familiar and safe. He can see the marshmallow creatures playing in the distance, their hats bobbing as they bound through a pastel-tinted world of sunlit clouds. They wag their tails, tweak their mustaches, urging him to join them. But they are fading, their edges blurring. In the opposite direction, shadows twist into deeper, richer colors: purple, red, gold. The air sparks with energy that Herb can't see, and the red-suited man stands, waiting, his smirk widening as he temptingly holds his jacket open, revealing an array of numbers and equations. Herb rubs his eyes, looks again in each direction. Herb is compelled by something unfathomable, but he thinks he understands. At his desk, Herb works feverishly, head down. He is focused on completing the spreadsheet for Geraldine. By lunchtime, he has succeeded in his task. Geraldine is happy. She pats the papers on her desk fondly, like a favorite pet. She'll look at them over the weekend, she tells Herb. She trusts him to have done a good job. We rejoin Herbert Truelove the following morning. It is Saturday. His tousled head emerges from beneath the bedclothes, and he greets the weekend with a yawn, blinking at the light creeping between the gap in his thin, bedroom curtains. He has slept well, remarkably well, in fact. It has been the best night's sleep Herb has had in a very long time. Those eyes of mine. The machine beeped, boiled and seethed. I pressed the button, and water leaked, filling the cup to its brim. A cup of coffee, pure. I opened the window wide, letting the breeze tingle the fuzz on my nape. Sat beneath it, picked up the cigarette from the ashtray that had burned lonely for so long that the ash stretched from its tip almost to the cotton, forming a bridge undisturbed by its weight. I shook it off and pulled on it. The taste of burned butt dominated the tobacco tang. The coffee cleansed it. Drops from the drizzle intruded on my domicile, enhancing the soothing effect of the wind on the dots they marred. The sun had tucked tail and crept behind clouds. Rest, the doctor had prescribed. Nerves, stretched thin, throbbed in harmony with the rain. Oh, the rain. How could I, Doc? The weather called my name. I donned my shoes and jacket, closed the door, strode down the stairs to the streets. The slabs of cement towered over, reaching for the skies. The drops welcomed me, painting me gently. A ball snuck in, got trapped between my eyes and glasses, while the rest rained down like arrows on a battlefield. People buzzed up and around, busy little bees. Yet, however or whomever I tried to peek at, all that I managed to see was but a blur, mangled by the shower, by the rain, by its tears. They paved a path for themselves, dug ruts on my glasses. My vision failed to pierce. I trailed what I assumed to be their tracks. When one's feet made space for themselves on the puddles as they stepped and left it vacant when they departed, that's when the ensuing spot got filled with water. It created a momentary footstep. That's what I followed. A fleeting moment, along the restless ponds, vibrating in seclusion from one another. The vista of concrete proved inescapable. For the moment, the puddles were left undisturbed. That's what they showed. A reflection of gray. Hubs of broken dreams. The vehicles behaved strangely under the rain. They too beeped, stalled, and buzzed around. The path led me along the blocks, passing from one street to the other. The vistas remained the same. Were they copies of one another? Or was I stuck in place? I lifted my head and flicked the flock of drops off my locks. That was the third bus stop that I approached. The carrier reloaded, its travelers hurrying outside with new ones coming on board. To avoid the crowd, I lingered in my gait, pulled out my pack, and plucked a treat. The way it nested on my lips brought a moment of respite. The lighter struggled, producing sparks, again and again. Yet no flame. The rain dampened both. The bus drove off. I continued my journey with no obstacles in sight, threading the many tracks left behind. "Need a light?" a question asked from beneath the canopy of the stop. The mess on my glasses had turned to a layer, a coat of mist, a mush of hair, clothes, legs, and arms, and a lighter, lit with a gray-washed flame. I crouched, touched the light, and tasted the smoke, pulled my head back into the rain. "What? You'll just leave?" the tender voice continued, anchoring me on the dock. I pondered. Was one cigarette enough? No. I towed 2 butts out of their home and returned the gesture. My glasses slid as I crouched, parked on the peaking bone of my nose. The clouds had slid too, allowing the sun to shoot its beams on the glass walls of the bus stop. Their pallid reflection blinded me, but I felt the pack lighten. The person lagged, suggesting hesitation. Disturbed by the sudden change in the weather, I looked back at the sun, but it was no more. Thicker clouds had settled in. The rain was picking up heat. "Don't miss the next one. If you wish to avoid the deluge, that is," I said, stowing the pack into my pocket. The hymning tone concealed a plea behind my ear, maybe one of attention or of interaction. Entertaining these ideas had brought me here, so I failed to see a reason for another attempt. My surroundings grew tired, a waterlogged world crying in its stead. Steps continued. The rain poured. The worse it got, the fewer people brooded. How did I end up here, I wondered, amid this city, amid the crosses of colorless walls, and amid the faceless people? How far had I wandered? How long it had been? I swerved on the road, heading towards the park. An island with different scenery. Or so I thought. The rain had dug its claws here too, washing away all that would help me recall what was. Think of what could have been. Instead, I was forced to watch what is in another gray landscape. The sky's tears battled with the leaves. The branches swung at one another. Fierce battles ensued. The road continued straight up to a fountain, where it diverged and transformed into a circle, and restoring itself back into a straight line, it continued. I sat near the formation, for the trees obeyed the road, and the sky, with its gray clouds, remained visible, and the battles fought turned into echoes from afar. The rain poured, thickening the layering clog on my glasses, changing it with another, never letting them rest. Down it poured. My cigarette had long been extinguished, yet the respite it brought remained all the same. And so I kept sucking on the wet cotton. Lost, I dabbled with questions I knew I shouldn't ask. A man's worst enemy was his own mind. I had hoped for the rain to wash away the colors of my brain too, but they remained, blinking ever so often, showing me what was. My clothes heavy, burdened with the rain, pulled me down on the bench. My hair too, wet as if splashed on my scalp. I bit the butt with my teeth and looked above, to the soaring skies. My eyes were protected, so I didn't flinch. Instead, I enjoyed the moment of rain, enjoyed the moment of solitude, the moment of respite. The rivers ran, the fountain spat, and the clouds rumbled. I remained. For how long could I remain? For how long would I? My legs pulled in pain, and noise had settled at the bottom of my feet, a numbing pump. My head ached. I pulled on my dimmed cigarette. In this park, I had hoped to encounter a spark of life. The leaves were falling, the branches were breaking from the wind, and my ankles drowned beneath the rivers. The pouring rain consumed. Hungry, it ate everything. But the pain, my teeth failed to cling on. My mouth gapped. I dropped my companion. It soaked, increased in weight, and sank. What was another lost cigarette in the rinsing sea? When the world went gray prologue, joy, happiness, life, creation, the spark of beginning, the heartbeat of earth itself, the endless manifestation of color and beauty and light, blossoming, growing, unfurling into something infinite. And then, one day, nothing. The world, once bursting with radiance, was swallowed whole, devoured by an oblivion so complete that even memory faded to grayscale, leaving behind only the cruel, inescapable taunt of black and white, a silent mockery of what once was. Shadows of what had been clung to the charred land beyond our shelter, reaching with desperate fingers toward a sky that had long since turned its back. And as the relentless nothingness took and took and took, we were left only to bear witness, to suffer in the empty remains of what we had destroyed. And as the world faded to monochrome, I became one of the countless shades of despair. Our city, once flooded with bustling citizens driving cars of every color, is reduced skeletal frames of buildings and cracked roads. A cruel reminder of the countless nights I spent, sleepless, hidden away in my attic, thriving off the colors coating my paint palette. The word around us hasn't just been burned, it's been erased, the vibrancy stripped away. I look around our underground shelter, and for people struggling to survive, everyone was perfectly content with making conversation from the concrete where they sat, as if they weren't on their deathbeds. We scrape by with the rations the leaders distribute weekly, our bodies weakened by hunger, our minds fractured by the unbearable monotony of a world without color. But it isn't the hunger or paranoia that haunts us. but the weight of absence, the memories of color fading with each passing, dissolving to add to the torture of the ash flakes contaminating the air. Black, white, gray. Repeat. Every damn time. And then I find myself thinking the same, though I thought since the day the world was drained of color. This is a dream. Colors can't just disappear. And yet, here we were in this mere sketch of what was a vast land that stretched on through the remains of the nuclear tragedy, colored in shades of ash and bone, where nothing grows and nothing dares to blossom. For now, I resort to my only escape, my eyelids suddenly feeling too heavy, my mind too weary. Symptoms we've long since accepted as the norm, and allow myself to relax against the concrete wall. Part 1. Rations are low. Too low. A small group of us was sent into the depths of our despair to scrounge together enough food to ensure our, at the least, survival. Survival doesn't always grace the entirety of our measly society, and it's unfortunate. But death, even at 17, is not an unfamiliar fate. I look out into the rubble, finally lifting my eyes from my sneakered feet for the first time since they stepped beyond the shelter's entrance. The land is silent, the only sound the crunching of boots landing against who knows what, and the whipping wind nipped at my skin, scattering my once auburn-streaked hair across the back of my jacket. Black, white, gray, rep. A gleam catches my eye. We're at the edge of the ruins. That's impossible. My feet are already betraying me, already venturing closer to this foreign feeling of freedom. 5 years ago was the last time I was graced with the presence of color. 5 years since the bombs. 5 years since this world was diminished to a mere grayscale. 5 years. For color to still exist would be out of the question. I track the glistening spark of hope, forcing my eyes to stay open, forcing my feet one in front of the other until, where'd it go? I blink. Scanning the scene, my eyes dart frantically from each piece of Colorly's scrap to the next. Come on. Come on. Come. Nothing. The unmistakable feeling of wilted grass prickles at my knees as they hit the ground where it was. The hope of color in an achromatic world slipped through my hoary fingers like sand slipping through the grasp of the ocean's spray continuously. Elara? Sienna, one of the other young scavengers asked, kneeling down in front of me. You okay? I blink back tears I didn't know were welling. Forcing composure I don't have, even as I feel the feather-light touch of Sienna's hand on my shoulder. I know I can tell Sienna the truth. She did take me in after the bombs killed my parents, but to burden her would be to break myself in the process. Yeah, my voice is breathy, as if I'm questioning my own answer, while letting the first one that comes to mind slip past my lips. If anyone is going to believe me, it's going to be her. She is the only family I have left, after all. I thought I saw color. Sienna's muted, but still striking. Once blue eyes go wide, clawing to clench onto the sliver of hope and clinging onto it like a lifeline. Anything. Everything. She leans closer, the shoulder-length, ashy hue filling her head, now slipping past her ear. If anyone can find it, it's you. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world, but that was just the way Sienna made everything seem. Easy. Like it wasn't the sight reignites a desperate hope, a longing to believe that life, in its fullest form, is not truly gone. Part 2. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't unsee it. I know it's risky. I know there are people here who need every last bit of help they can get. But if there's a better, beautifully vivid world out there, inching to be found, it needs to be found. So here I am, in the thick, inky embrace of the dead of night, my fingers curling tightly around the worn, chilled rungs of the ladder that stretches upward like a fragile, rust-bitten bridge to a world I have long since sworn, with every fiber of my being, to unravel, to tear apart piece by piece, if that's what it takes, all in pursuit of that elusive, flickering glint, something small, something distant, something that once dared to catch and hold the fleeting light of a bleached and weary sun. Because if there is one truth I refuse to let slip through the cracks of time, it is that color, in all its wild, untamed brilliance, is not just an indulgence, not merely an ornament to be admired from afar, but a necessity, a lifeblood that the world not only craves, but deserves to be drenched in, to be wholly consumed by. And if it is within my grasp to bring it back, to pry it from the hands of whatever force dares to smother it, then I will chase it, seize it, and deliver it without hesitation, no matter the cost. Singed, sealed, delivered. Address: a monochrome world once called Earth. Surrounded by rubble, I step out into the spotted sky and let the chill of a rare wind smack me right in the face. A stark contrast to the warmth seeping across my chest. I shake my head at myself and how I utterly disregarded the warnings of the other survivors, and so effortlessly snuck out of the security of our shelter into the wasteland so eagerly. I glance around the land stretched out before me, waste crowding the ground and ashes polluting the air. and I swear the hues of gray, now illuminated by stars and a moon, that appeared as dots and a waning semicircle, were darker than black, everything meshing with the ink-stained sky. I will find it. I'll find it, if it kills me. I will. Then, just beyond the endless stretch of night, a shimmer, the faintest trace of warmth against the cold monotony. It's real, I murmur, though no one is around to overhear. It has to be. Part 3. I walk for hours, and it still feels like I've gone nowhere. I'm still surrounded by the gray void, still surrounded by remains of a better life, and still with the shimmering speck of hope before me, not stopping. The landscape is an endless graveyard of the past. Twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and roads that crack beneath my feet stretch on like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Everything is still. No birds cry overhead, no wind whispers through trees, because there are no trees left to whisper through. The silence is heavy, pressing against me like the weight of the sky itself. I huff, pressing my back against a crumbling door, not bothering to look at the house, but rather the swing set across the road, peering intently as it swings back and forth in the stillness of night, moved by something unseen. Perhaps the ghost of the child who cherished it. A sigh slips past my lips at the tempting offer of sleep, but refusing to give in quiet yet, I push my weight forward. My feet drag, weighing me down. Black, white, great repeat. It's infuriating that I can't close the distance between me and my last hope of color. My eyes snag on a reflection in the road. My pace quickens. My footfalls echo in the empty, colorless world as I near the glinting surface. A mirror, cracked, dirt-speckled, abandoned in the middle of the road, like it doesn't belong. Like nothing belongs. I slow, breathing hard. My reflection stares back at me, distorted by the fractures spider-webbing across the glass. The same dull world is behind me, the same lifeless sky above. But beneath me, just beyond the cracks, something else. Green, my breath catches. A patch of grass, impossibly vivid, bleeding through the reflection as if it exists in another world, as if it's real, somewhere, somehow. I step forward, heart pounding, kneeling at the mirror's edge. My fingers hover over the glass. The colors look too bright, too alive, like they'd burn if I touched them. But I don't hesitate. I kick the mirror. It shatters under my heel with a sharp, crystalline crack. Splinters of glass scatter across the road, glinting like stars in the empty light. I brace myself for something, anything, a shift in the air, a tremor in the ground, a door opening where there was none before. But when I look down, the green is gone, just shards of broken glass, catching the darkened sky in their edges. Just my own reflection, fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I lurch forward, scraping at the road where the mirror used to be. Nothing. No hidden portal. No sliver of color left behind. My hands shake. Tears, clear wetness, drip down my cheeks in slowed fashion. My breathing comes in clipped gasps. I saw it. I know I did. The wind stirs, sending a few stray fragments skittering away. I watch them disappear down the road, swallowed by the nothingness stretching endlessly ahead. And then I keep walking, pushing harder, further, relentless. Part 4. I refuse to let myself stop. I won't. I can't. Not if I want any chance at finding the color I've recklessly craved. My eyes follow the path I left in the dust, the sun rising higher in the sky, and then, thunk, the ground hits me before I can brace for it. Pain shoots through my skull in sharp, electric volts. I glance up, dazed, and see the thick trunk of the tree I just slammed into, its rough bark pressing into my chest, pinning me to the earth. I wince, trying to push myself up, but my head swims with dizziness. The tree stands tall, towering over me like an ancient sentinel, its branches casting long shadows in the early morning light. I can feel its strength, as if it's mocking my weakness, daring me to rise again. I press my palms to the ground, leaves crunching beneath them, and accept this tree's challenge. The rough earth presses against my skin, grounding me in this moment, daring me to rise. A chill runs through my spine as I push myself up, dirt clinging to my fingertips. The air is thick, damp, charged with something unseen but undeniable. Prepared to confront the tree, I stand to my feet and ball my fists, the tension in my body coiling like a spring. I'm ready. My knuckles tighten, breath steadying, until a sharp, almost imperceptible sting pricks at my palm. Crunch. My hand flattens instinctively, fingers twitching as I feel the sensation spread. The leaves, crisp and brittle, stick to my skin like they belong there. A brief annoyance flickers through me, and I almost brush them off without a second thought, until something stops me cold. The color, not gray, not black, not the dry, lifeless husks of darkness. These leaves are green. It's faint, fading, dying, but it's there. The realization steals the breath from my lungs. Green here, among the decay. Color still exists, but it is fading. The world is not truly black and white. It is dying in slow motion. The nuclear bombs did not erase color. It severed life's connection to it, leaving only those who remember it to witness its vanishing. A smirk, one I haven't worn since the day of the bombs, breaks across my lips. It all makes sense. I have to find the color. I have to find the, what about everyone else? What about Sienna? I cut myself off, bending to gather a handful of dull leaves from the ground. Sienna would want this. If anyone can find it, it's you. My grip on the leaves tightens as if I can hold on to her words, onto her for guidance like I always have, and I intend to do just that. One step for hope, another for faith, 2 steps for a new life, another for Sienna, and then I'm sprinting, not daring to look back. Finn, the enchanted mind's canvas. Ella carefully added the finishing touches to her painting, layering vibrant strokes of green amid the earthy browns and faded tans of fall. The scene was one she had sketched in the park days ago. A quiet landscape draped in the remnants of late autumn, the air crisp with the bite of encroaching winter. As her brush danced across the canvas, her mind drifted to the frozen pond she had sat across from, its surface resembling a sheet of shattered glass reflecting the pale autumn sky. Then something shifted. A sudden eerie chill prickled her skin, creeping over her arms despite the warmth of her studio. The faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled her nose, so vivid it nearly overwhelmed her senses. A sharp gust of wind brushed past her cheek, biting at the tip of her nose. She gasped. Her fingers trembled around the brush as the sensation deepened, no longer just a figment of her imagination. It felt real. The world around her wavered, its edges blurring as if reality itself had begun to ripple beneath her fingertips. Ella's heart raced. Her hand wasn't just gliding over the painting, it was sinking into it. Her studio began to shift, the walls dissolving into streaks of color, and then, in an instant, she was there. The park looked exactly as she had painted it. Frost-laced grass, undressed trees swaying, and a frozen pond glistening under the pale sunlight. The icy air sent a chill up her spine as the wind whispered through brittle branches. Her heart pounded. How am I here? Before she could take a step forward, the sensation snapped, sharp and sudden, like a rubber band stretched to its limit. The world around her rushed past in a dizzying blur, and in the blink of an eye, she was yanked back to her studio. Ella glanced around, her breath unsteady as she tried to ground herself. Her gaze settled back on her painting, looming more vibrant, more lifelike, almost as if it had absorbed some essence of reality itself. Her eyes then fell to the floor, scattered across the hardwood were remnants of dead grass and brittle leaves, the very same ones that had lined the park's frozen ground. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Then, like a whisper from the past, a memory surfaced. One she had long convinced herself was nothing more than a dream. This had happened before. A few months after waking from her coma, she had felt the same eerie pull, like an inexplicable shift between worlds. But she had dismissed it, blaming it on the lingering haze of recovery, a mere figment of her imagination. But it wasn't just her imagination, was it? She had seen it happen, and more. It started subtly. Cats stretching, birds ruffling their feathers, shifting within the canvas. With each incident, her paintings became eerily lifelike, earning her recognition and eventually her own gallery exhibition. But this was different. This time, she hadn't just brought something to life. She had been pulled into it. A shiver ran down her spine. The cold from that autumn landscape still clinging to her bones. She turned back to the painting, a strange weight settling in her chest. Whatever was happening to her, it wasn't just art anymore. It was something deeper, something more powerful, and she had no idea how to control it. 5 years ago. Anxious and impatient, Ella paced the hospital, her walker tracing an endless figure 8 of corridors. She wanted out. She was bored, exhausted, and angry, tired of the constant checkups, the intrusive monitoring, the way doctors spoke about her as if she weren't in the room. Most of all, she was tired of feeling like the world had moved on without her. Her classmates had graduated, their social media filled with college acceptance letters, beach trips, and late-night adventures. Meanwhile, she was stuck here, relearning how to walk, how to hold a fork without her hands trembling, how to exist in a life that had been paused for a little over 6 months. For half a year, Elizabeth Ella Larson had been lost in a silent void, trapped in a coma she had no memory of falling into. One moment, she was on the bus ride home from a school field trip, laughing with her friends. The next, darkness. Her class's bus narrowly avoided a catastrophic collision with a tractor trailer. The truck driver, having fallen asleep at the wheel, veered into the bus's lane, forcing the driver to make a desperate maneuver to prevent disaster. While most students escaped with minor injuries, the incident took a more serious toll on a few. Tragically, the bus driver suffered a heart attack at the scene, and 2 students sustained severe head injuries, slipping into comas, Ella being one of them. When Ella woke, the piercing brightness of hospital lights and the rhythmic beeping of monitors shattered the stillness, as if time had paused. But the world hadn't waited for her. Her face was already all over social media, her story shared and reshared by curious classmates. Though her parents and hospital staff tried to shield her from the media, it was inevitable. Visiting friends posted selfies and status updates, ensuring her return wasn't just her own. Initially, the attention was overwhelming. Luckily, to Ella's relief, the novelty eventually faded. Only a few persistent reporters and social media diehards still sought a glimpse of the girl who emerged from a coma. Meanwhile, life resumed for everyone else, leaving Ella to realize she hadn't just lost 6 months. She had lost so much more. Pep rallies, graduation, and spring break. Before the accident, Ella had been an exceptional artist for her age. She had spent years perfecting her craft, creating paintings so lifelike they seemed to breathe on the canvas. Art was her passion, her escape, and hopefully her future. She had applied to countless schools, dreaming of the day she would walk through the doors of an art academy. But the more she recovered, the more she sensed that something had changed. A strange energy pulsed through her hands, as if the accident had left behind more than just scars. At first, she had brushed the feeling off as nothing more than a lingering effect of her recovery. However, when she finally picked up a pencil again, her art would begin to capture more than just reality. Hoping to lift her spirits, her parents brought her sketchbook. The physical therapist agreed and encouraged her to draw, believing it might restore her fine motor skills quickly. But the first time she tried sketching, her fingers, once so steady, betrayed her. The once effortless strokes turned to jagged, clumsy lines, chicken scratch from a toddler's hand. Frustrated and disheartened, she shoved the sketchbook aside and refused to touch it for days. Then, one afternoon, on impulse, she picked it up again. She began sketching the vase of flowers that sat on her hospital windowsill, a gift from her art teacher. The sunlight caught the delicate curve of a lily petal just right, making it the perfect subject to draw. As she sketched the details, a strange warmth spread through her fingertips. As Ella became completely immersed in her sketch, her mind wholly focused, the air around her began to shift. The scent of fresh lilies began to overwhelm her senses, far more intense than before. Startled, she looked up. Her breath caught. The real flowers had changed. The lilies that were half closed were now in full bloom, mirroring the one she had just finished drawing. Her sketchbook slipped from her hands, landing with a soft thud on the hospital bed. Ella stared at her fingers, watching as dust particles swirled in the afternoon light. Except they weren't just dust. The air around her shimmered, an iridescent glow clinging to her skin. She blinked, her heart pounding. It had to be a hallucination, a trick of her recovering mind. Just a dream, she told herself, while her eyes were still fixated on her hands. Yet deep down, she knew the truth. Something within her had been unlocked. Awakened by the sun's warmth, Ella sat up, squinting against the bright light streaming through her bedroom window. Despite the winter chill, the morning sun cast an ironic touch of warmth to the frigid 30-degree day. As she shook off the haze of sleep, the sharp beeping of her alarm clock jolted her fully awake, a nagging reminder of the day ahead. She was scheduled to inspect the gallery rooms in the newly opened art building downtown, ensuring her pieces were displayed exactly as she envisioned. Tomorrow marked her debut exhibition, the moment she had worked toward for years. Excitement and nerves twisted in her chest. It was finally here, and she wasn't about to leave anything to chance. Silencing the alarm, Ella swung her legs over the bed and took a steadying breath. She grabbed the outfit she had picked out the day before, sophisticated yet artistic, the perfect balance. Heading towards the bathroom, she caught a glimpse of her latest work leaning against the wall, a hypnotic twilight scene of Pittsburgh's skyline reflected in the Monongahela River. The river seemed to shimmer, as if a ripple might break across the surface if she stared too long. Nope. Nope. Not today, she muttered, quickly looking away. No incident, especially not tomorrow. But what if it happened again? What if a painted river overflowed, flooding the gallery? Or a sudden gust of wind swept through, touching the viewers? And what if they realized what she could do? She pushed the thought aside, taking a deep breath as she splashed water on her face. She needed to focus on the gallery, on today. No distractions. She'd been careful all week. Still, the memory of being transported to the park unnerved her. Nothing that extreme had happened since, but the occasional ripple of water or a bird nearly lifting off the canvas was enough to make her uneasy. After getting dressed, she made a quick breakfast. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a text from her best friend, Rosalie. Good luck, Ella, and relax. You've got this. See you tomorrow at the show. Ella smiled at the words, even though her stomach was in knots. She typed back, "Thanks. I'll see you tomorrow." Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. This time, the gallery curator. Just a reminder, the final walkthrough is scheduled for 11 a.m. Bring any additional pieces you'd like to include in the collection. The gallery is confident your work will be a hit. Ella inhaled and exhaled slowly. Everything would be fine. She grabbed the two paintings, the one of Pittsburgh reflected in the Monongahela, and another tucked behind it, along with her purse and keys. By the time she arrived at the gallery, her nerves had settled into quiet determination. The venue was stylish and contemporary, with high ceilings and whitewashed walls, perfect for showcasing her work. A gallery handler took the paintings she'd brought, placing them in their designated room, while a marketing assistant guided her through the maze of exhibits. Each piece displayed exactly as she had envisioned. She moved through the gallery, carefully inspecting each painting, occasionally adjusting placements to perfect the flow. Her twilight scene of Pittsburgh's skyline sat front and center, positioned so the lighting captured every reflective detail in the water. But as she stared at the shimmering river, a familiar pull stirred in her chest. No, not now. Not here. She forced herself to look away, focusing on the next piece, a series of landscapes inspired by the city's parks. Under the gallery lights, the colors felt more vibrant, almost alive, as if one could stride in. But as she neared a painting of a dense, forested path, the pull returned, subtle yet unsettling. Her hand trembled as she reached for the wall to steady herself. She couldn't risk it. Not here. Not today. Why was this starting again? Was it because she was tense and anxious? Trying to suppress the sensation, she shifted her focus to the gallery curator and marketing assistant, who had been quietly observing her. Forcing a smile, she said, "Everything looks great. I think we're all set for tomorrow. Fantastic. Everything will be perfect. We just need you to review the virtual gallery site and give your approval," the curator said cheerfully. Ella nodded, her thoughts swirling. Tomorrow would be okay. She just had to keep her focus. If she could get through today without any mishaps, then tomorrow, the grand opening, she would be able to maintain control. She just had to make sure nothing came to life from her paintings or whisked anyone away. The next day arrived in a flash. Her art exhibition was set to begin at 1 p.m., and she needed to be at the gallery by 11 a.m. to handle any last-minute details, do a final walkthrough, and prepare for the guests. Last night, after returning home to unwind, she had felt the urge to draw, but she forced herself not to. She needed to rest, to stay focused. She didn't want to tempt the growing power within her. By the time Ella stepped into the gallery, the air was rich with the scent of fresh flowers, the sweetness of wine, and the faint trace of new paint. The space had transformed overnight. Elegant spotlights bathed each painting in a soft glow, making the artwork seem even more alive. Small, stylish benches were arranged throughout the room, inviting visitors to linger. Soon, guests began to arrive, mingling with glasses of wine in hand, their murmurs forming a low hum of anticipation. Ella smoothed her dress, a beautiful wrap dress with bell sleeves, the fabric printed with an abstract design from one of her early paintings. Her friend Rosalie had helped bring it to life, sewing it into a wearable piece of art. Ella's hands trembled slightly as she scanned the room, watching how people responded to her work. Rosalie was the first to spot her, letting out an excited squeal as she rushed over. "You did it, Ella. Look at all these people. And your work. It's absolutely breathtaking under these lights. You've been busy over the years. Just look at all these paintings." She squeezed Ella's arms, beaming. "How are you feeling?" Ella forced a smile, letting out a nervous chuckle. "Excited, nervous, and definitely a little terrified." Rosalie laughed reassuringly. "Totally normal. Just breathe, okay? This is the moment you've been waiting for. And it's happening." Before Ella could respond, a voice cut through their conversation. Ella Larson. She turned to see a distinguished older man with long salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes behind wire-framed glasses. He extended a hand. "Hello, I'm George Morgan, art critic for the Tribune. I must say, your work is astonishing. There's a vibrancy and realism here that I rarely see in paintings these days." Ella's heart pounded against her ribs. "Thank you, Mr. Morgan. That means a lot." She smiled, trying to keep her nerves in check. His gaze lingered on the twilight of Pittsburgh painting. This one in particular. It's mesmerizing. It almost feels as though the water is truly moving. How did you achieve such a remarkable effect? Ella swallowed hard. "Oh, I tend to get in a zone," she said with a small, nervous smile. "A lot of detail, layering, and finding the right mix of paint." Morgan nodded approvingly. "Enchanting, almost lifelike." As the critic moved on, Rosalie elbowed Ella subtly. "See, you're already impressing the media." Ella barely had time to absorb the moment before Dina, the gallery owner, approached with an eager expression. "Ella, would you mind coming with me? The guests would love to hear a few words from you. Some are already interested in purchasing your work. Just a short welcome and a bit about your inspiration, okay?" Ella's stomach clenched, but she nodded. This was part of the dream, right? Taking a deep breath, she followed Dina to a small platform at the center of the room. As the soft clinking of glasses faded and guests turned to face her, Dina introduced her. Ella steadied herself and took a deep breath. "Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Larson, but most people call me Ella. First, I want to thank Dina, the gallery owner, and Jessie, the curator, for giving my art the honor of being the first exhibit in this beautiful new space. And of course, thank you all for being here tonight." She continued her speech, her voice growing steadier with each word. When she finished, a soft round of applause filled the room. Ella exhaled, a wave of relief washing over her. But just as she stepped down, a ripple of movement caught her eye. The twilight river. The light against the canvas shimmered. The water within the painting trembled as if stirred by a real breeze. Ella's breath hitched. No, not now. Please, not now." Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to focus, willing the movement to stop. Every ounce of concentration was poured into holding it still. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, grounding herself. Slowly, the movement faded. The river stilled. She exhaled, relief washing over her as she forced a smile, just as a guest approached with a compliment. Hold it together. Just a few more hours. But deep down, she knew the truth. Her abilities weren't just growing stronger. They were tied to her emotions. And she was losing control. Across the room, a guest murmured in disbelief. "I could have sworn the cat's tail just wagged." Another gasp followed. Did that bird just fly to the other side of the canvas? Ella's stomach twisted. She needed to master her abilities fast. The painted door, for what feels like an eternity. I stare at the bloodied body without being able to move. It's sprawled at my feet, limbs flung wide open, limp, each arm and leg pointing in a different direction on the filthy cobblestone ground of the tiny, walled, dark, and abandoned courtyard. Above us, the moonlight and the sparks of stars flicker behind white clouds that slice through a deep blue sky, like ghost ships crossing distant, uncharted seas. The layers of mythical creatures and fearsome leviathans. With my free hand, I grope blindly at my own stomach, applying pressure to the wounds, the deep cuts that tore through flesh and muscles during the fight. Warm, dark blood gushes between my fingers, trickling down my arm, soaking the inner sleeve of my shirt and jacket. A lantern shines through the fogged glass of a third-floor window in the adjacent building. I run and hide, crouching behind a bush. Clenching my teeth, I stifle a groan. "Who's there?" demands the gruff, weathered voice of an old man. Through the tangle of leaves, cloaked in shadows, I watch him. He wears a long, white cotton nightgown and a matching cap. One hand holds the open window, while the other grips the lit lantern. He squints and scans the courtyard, fixing his gaze on the body. Hey, you degenerate drunkard. Go die somewhere else, Satan. Shoo, shoo. He yells like this for a minute or two, then grunts, mutters a curse, shuts the window, and disappears along with the light inside the room. I lift my head and look around, peering through one of the gaps in the ancient stone wall into the street. Seeing no one, I seize the opportunity to leave the scene. I rise, pull myself over the wall, and slip into the narrow, winding cobblestone streets. I try to move quickly, but quietly. I fail at both. The wound slows me down, saps my strength, the precision of my movements, and wherever I pass, I catch the attention of horses tied to posts or hitched to carriages, and dogs guarding gardens and courtyards. The former neigh and snort, the latter bark, bare their teeth, and growl behind fences, stone walls, or the iron bars of gates. The streets are deserted, except for the animals, silent save for their sounds, the gusts of wind, the rustling of leaves, the creak of hinges on lonely shop, and tavern signs swaying in the dim light. Of the lanterns hanging from sparsely spaced posts along the paths, only a few remain lit. I regret coming on foot, but at the same time, I know I had no choice. I couldn't risk having the coachman as a witness, and driving my own carriage alone would have raised too many suspicions. A rider draws far more attention than a man on foot. A man can move unnoticed, can hide at the first sign of danger, can leap over walls and slip through courtyards unseen, can climb walls and travel across rooftops. After a while, I stop feeling my legs, stop perceiving their movement. Despite my thick, fine clothes, I feel a terrible cold creeping up my spine, stabbing beneath my ribs, filling my chest and guts with dread. I collapse on my knees beside a wall and sit with my back against it in a dark alley, sheltered by shadows, trash, and foul smells. Just a minute, I think. I only need a minute. If I allow myself 1 or 100, I can't say. But I wake startled when the clamor of sirens and bells reaches my ears. I've been discovered. They're after me. I bury the fingers of my free hand in the crevices of the wall, between the stones, and pull myself back onto my feet. I resume dragging myself forward, attempting to run. I stagger in zigzags, stumble and nearly fall, collide with posts, carriages, empty stakes, and walls, yet press on, one street at a time and one turn at a time, choosing the most crooked and darkest paths, cutting through back alleys, narrow lanes, and forgotten open courtyards. The dreadful symphony of the pursuit never seems far, but also doesn't gain on me as much as I fear. It follows me closely, always keeping the same distance, as if it were holding back for now. It is a macabre, inhuman sound, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I am about to turn a corner when I see the light. Unlike any other I have ever encountered. It is not yellow or orange like the light of fire or lanterns. It is white, pulsating, alive, like sunlight itself. I stop, leaning against the wall of a building, mesmerized. The light crawls over the cobblestones like a living thing, formless and boundless. As it approaches, the colors of the lanterns, the animals, the stones, the ground, the walls, everything it is about to touch, fade away. It is as if the light is absorbing these colors, transforming objects into pencil sketches on white paper, like the ones I make before transferring my drawings in color to the canvases that I exchange for prestige, privilege, and fortune. Then the light swallows them, sucks up the colorless drafts as well, consumes them as if it were an immense, infinite mouth. The mouth of God, reclaiming into cosmic oblivion the living and the dead of this world. Behind the blinding curtain, the world disappears, ceasing to exist in a way that defies both physics and human intellect. Slowly, the light moves forward, a white void, smooth and shapeless, transforming what once was into nothingness. It is at that moment that the bells and sirens grow louder and closer, unbearably near. I look around and then start running again. I cross the intersection, with the light devouring the finite world to my right, and follow the street perpendicular to its advance. In a desperate attempt to lose my pursuers, I turn corners at random, sometimes left, sometimes right, zigzagging northward. My twists and turns are not always aimless. At times, I am forced to turn here and there, or backtrack when the wall of light appears just a few steps ahead of me, burning my eyes and rushing to envelop me. I shield my face behind my free hand and dive into the first available path to the right or left, or pivot on my heels and retrace my steps to the previous crossroads. Thus, I conquer the paved streets and the dirt roads, crossing the mile-long stretch that separates the town from my private hill and the mansion crowning it. I pass through the garden gates and rush to the front door. The guards and other staff still awake at this hour are startled, surrounding me, offering to help me walk, to carry me to a bed, a chair. They inquire about my injury, whether they should send a rider to fetch the physician from the village. I command them all to step back, to leave me alone, ordering that every door and window be sealed. For a brief moment, I work alongside them in this endeavor, but then I turn and make my way down the corridors to the bedroom. I kneel by the side of the massive canopy bed and touch Maria's warm face as she sleeps in peace and oblivion, undisturbed by the banging of doors, the shouted exchange of orders, or the music threatening to unravel my perfect world, the clamor of that million-strong chorus of sirens and bells. Gently, I wake her and help her to her feet. Quickly, my love, come with me. You must come with me, I whisper urgently, pulling her by the hand. She follows, trembling, crying, asking about all that blood, about the injuries, and the blood, the blood, the blood. So it was all over, then. Had I won? Were we finally free to live our love, no longer bound by escapes, lies, persecutions, or consequences. I pull her by the hand through the corridors to my studio. Along the way, I grab one of the lanterns hanging from rings fixed to the stone walls. I enter, pull her inside, and lock the door behind us. Frantically, I fly from one side of the room to the other, ensuring all other entrances and windows are shut as well. I move unsteadily, stumbling, pushing aside finished paintings, knocking over empty easels, unfinished canvases, and tables cluttered with papers, palettes, jars of paint, and brushes. Once convinced that every possible entry is sealed, I return to Maria, grasping her hand again, and lead her toward one of the walls. I scour the floor for a brush and a jar of paint. When I open the first jar, I find inside a solid, useless, gray lump. I hurry around the room, gathering more jars, only to find them equally futile. I try using the paint from the palettes, attempting to make it at least pliable with saliva. But to no avail. I find myself clutching a dry, useless brush, turning helplessly in place, sobbing, groaning in pain. Then I remember the wound, the blood. I return to the wall, grip, trembling, inconsolable and bewildered Maria's hand. Dip the brush into my own wound, pulling it out with bristles drenched in blood, dripping red. Together, we approach the wall, and I begin to work. The bells and sirens grow ever closer, unbearably close, now just outside the corridor, sounding in neighboring rooms. With desperate and vigorous strokes, I paint a doorknob, our only escape route. In my mind, I paint on the other side the perfect world, the perfect life, the happy ending we deserve. I squeeze Maria's hand a little tighter. I let the brush slip from my sticky, blood-soaked fingers, falling with a muffled thud beneath the cacophony of sirens and bells. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. With my free hand, I reach toward the doorknob and grasp nothing. No, this can't be. I open my eyes and try again, this time keeping them wide open. Around us, the bells and sirens engulf the world, drowning out every other sound and voice. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. I look around, over my shoulder. From every corner of the studio, through the cracks in the windows and doors, the white, deadly light, that devouring force, seeps into the room. It stretches through gaps between boards and under the passages, swallowing colors, easels, brushes, canvases, and loose sheets of paper. I turn to Maria for one last embrace, but there is no time to know if the movement is completed or if the light is faster, extinguishing us before our farewell can come to fruition. I wake up with my head pounding. the bells and sirens exploding within my temples. And then the music begins to make sense. It sounds familiar, and I realize it is not composed of actual bells or sirens. Blindly, I stretch my arm to the side, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, and turn off the alarm. I squint at the blinding white light of the sun streaming through the window of my small room, at the foot of my bed. Instinctively, still shrouded in the fog of dreams, I touch my stomach, searching for wounds, only to find it unscathed. Afterward, I get up, wait for the occupant of room 23 to finish their shower, take mine, get dressed, fill my travel mug with coffee in the kitchen on the ground floor of the pension, and rush to the bus stop a block away. Exactly at 7:45 a.m., I knock on the side door of the cafe where I work, located in the food court on the second floor of the Central Mall. William, the grumpy and bald manager, lets me in with a scowl and a grunt. I promptly put on my apron over my uniform, wear my cap, and take up my position. By 8:00 a.m., we are open and running full steam. At 8:17 a.m., Maria arrives. My sweet, small, slender, blonde, and gentle Maria with blue eyes. It's Thursday, and as usual, she is accompanied by her husband. He looks different in 21st century clothes, free of blood, with both eyes intact and without fatal gashes across his neck. They hold hands as they stand in line. At 8:22 a.m., they are in front of me, smiling and politely placing their order while they speak and smile, and I absent-mindedly jot down their requests. I see through the space between their bodies and heads, across the food court, into the art studio on the other side. At once, even from that distance, my eyes find the painting that captivated me 3 days ago. Among the dozens of canvases and easels displayed in the windows, a couple holding hands before a door painted on a wall. The man, clearly a celebrated artist from the 18th or 19th century, still clutching a brush wet with paint. And the door. That door. That door. And that freedom. And that door. And suddenly, they could go anywhere they wanted to, could love each other and be happy wherever they pleased, as much as their hearts desired, in any place they chose, and nothing else could follow them. Not through that door. Nothing beyond them would be able to cross it. Certainly, nothing bad or evil. I finish jotting down their order. We exchange pleasantries, and the couple turns their back on me. Maria turns her back on me, taking a seat at one of the tables with her husband. The two share a brief kiss, a tender smile. Clearing my throat, I call out in a loud and steady voice, "Next!" And the line moves, and life goes on around here. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.